Look, most reps are doing follow-ups completely wrong, and it's costing them thousands in pipeline every single month. I'm talking about sending just bumping this up or any thoughts emails that get ignored, or worse, get you marked as spam and get your domain destroyed. When I was an SDR averaging 138% of my number, or when I was the youngest AE at Revolut and hit 141% in my first quarter, over 80% of my meetings came from my follow-ups, not my first email. But here's the thing, I wasn't following up like everyone else. I had a system, and this is the same system that's helped my clients like Christian go from 40 meetings a month to 90 meetings a month across his whole team in just 6 months, or help reps like David source $500,000 of pipeline in his first 2 weeks using this exact follow-up framework that I'm about to show you. So in this video, I'm breaking down the only cold email follow-up strategy that you need for 2026, and I'm showing you exactly what to send, when to send it, and how to actually get prospects to respond instead of ghosting you. Most reps follow up from a place of being selfish. They're not trying to be helpful. They're thinking, I need more meetings, I need to hit quota, I need to get a response, and this just comes through in all of their emails. Prospects feel that desperation through the screen. Examples of emails doing this is where reps send things like, just bumping this up, any thoughts, did you have a chance to check on this? In my opinion, this is just you hammering people because you want to hit your number. You're not thinking about anything from the prospect's perspective or what's important for them. When you're creating follow-up emails, there's a three-part framework that you need to install to have the right mindset to genuinely get responses. Part one, which is why you reached out, your trigger. You have to have a strong reason to actually justify the outreach in the first place. Maybe they're hiring new reps. Maybe they recently joined the company. Maybe they just got a promotion, but you have to have a reason to actually be in their inbox. The second thing is you'll probably have an issue you can fix based off that trigger. If somebody's recently joined the company, then they're probably thinking about how they're going to have an impact in their first 90 days. If the company's recently hired multiple new salespeople, the managers are probably thinking about how they're going to get them ramped up to speed. Your goal is to show how you can fix the potential issue that they'll have based on that trigger. It's your job to tie what's happened to what could be a focus and bridge your solution as the way to fix it. And the third part is ultimately you don't know if they actually have that issue. Outbound is just your best bad guess. You're assuming, you're guessing. You just have to go with what could be a focus for them. So don't be selfish enough to assume that they have to respond or that has to be the issue that they're dealing with. The key idea is that when we're sending these cold emails, we're like a doctor. This thing's happened. It could lead to these symptoms. And if they have it, we know we can help them. But we can't force this medication down their throat. What we have to do is show them that something's changed, something could be an issue, and that we have a way to help them overcome that particular issue. The doctor is not going to hit you with 52 messages after the appointment begging you to show up, begging you to come again to have the medication. They're just going to make it aware that if you do want support, then they're there for you. The next thing to consider is the 3% versus the 97% framework. Only 3% of your market is ultimately ready to buy right now. That means 97% of the market is not even in a position to be thinking about your solution. Your job with follow-ups is to just find this 3% of the market who's ready to buy now. The people who are already problem aware, who already realize they have an issue and are actively looking to solve it. The next job, though, is to educate the 97% to move them from the bottom of the pyramid to closer to the top to eventually get them to that 3% who are ready to buy now. Your job is to make them problem aware, talk to them about the potential issues, make it clear what could be a focus, show the different angles they haven't even thought about, and give them value to become a genuine resource when you're reaching out. One of the most important things to understand, which so many reps miss, is even if they're not in that 3% ready to buy now, they could be in the future. So do not spam your whole time, reach out to every single person with generic messaging because you're desperate to book a meeting right now. Your job is to provide genuine value. So even if they're not ready now, they'll come back in the future. And when I was sending cold emails, I had hundreds of prospects over the course of my tenure eventually come back, maybe a month later, maybe a quarter later, because I was a genuine consultant in my initial outreach. So now we've gone through the mindset, let's get into the actual tactics of what types of emails can you be sending. The first one is what I call the third-party framework, and this is a value-based email. The whole idea behind this is to give them something useful that they can use today. This isn't some random white paper, some generic article, and it's nothing about you or your product. It's an external resource that educates them and helps them about the potential issue. So if I'm reaching out to a sales leader, I might give them a blog post from Gong or HubSpot on how to ramp their reps faster. I could give them an industry report, giving them information information to help them out in their role. I could give them some relevant case studies or things that have been mentioned about how they've solved specific issues that that leader could have. I could even give them exact frameworks that they can just start using in their day to day right now. The most important thing to consider when you're doing this is the resource has to be genuinely valuable. If the resource is useful, they're going to tie the value they get from that resource to you and your outreach, and therefore think that your solution is ultimately going to be more valuable. The structure of this message is super simple. The first line is leading with your trigger. Call out why you're reaching out to that prospect right now. Something like, hey Sarah, notice you've hired 4 new BDRs in the past few months. The next line is to position the value. Lead with what you found and why it could be helpful. Found this article from Gong, thought it could be useful. Line 3 is then explaining what's actually in it. For example, it talks about the best strategies their VP of sales used to scale their team from 10 reps to 100 reps in EMEA in 3 months. It has to be clear what value they're actually going to get from reading this document. People are busy, people have their own priorities, so make sure you position it as something they're actually going to get value from to their role, their KPIs, and their day to day. Line 4 is to then just link the resource. Don't gate it or make them have to opt in with an email. Just send them the direct link so they can start looking at it to make sure they get the value as quickly as possible. And the last line is a soft bump. Loop it back to your previous outreach. PS, any thoughts on the last message or something like that to just tie this article back to your initial outreach. Here's a real example of what this email could look like to an SDR manager who's maybe just hired a few different people. Something like, hey John, given you've hired a few new BDRs, thought this article from Gong could be useful. It talks about the exact strategies their VP of sales used to scale their team from 10 reps to 100 reps in EMEA while cutting ramp time from 3 months to 2. Here's the link. Hope you find some use. PS, any thoughts on my last emails? There's a few reasons why this email works so well. The first one is the law of reciprocity. If you give value, people naturally feel inclined to give you something back. I.e., if you help someone out, if you give them value, they're naturally going to think to come to you when they realize they have an issue or when they're looking for different solutions. The second thing is you're not asking for anything. You're just giving them value up front. This flips the narrative completely on its head. So many reps reach out desperate for time, desperate for a meeting, asking for things from the prospect. They're trying to withdraw. What you're doing with this approach is depositing value. You're giving them something that's tactical they can use and helps them out in their day to day. The next part is ultimately they may not be ready to buy this month, and that's absolutely fine. They're going to remember you. And if you give value over a long enough time period, people are going to view you as an expert and as a consultant and come back to you. Just a quick tip, make sure to send resources that actually make sense to your prospects. So when I'm reaching out to sales leaders, SDR managers, BDR managers, heads of sales, I'm going to give them actual frameworks that they can start using and testing with their team. When I was selling to CFOs and finance leaders at Revolut, I would give them genuine industry reports about the different foreign exchange rates so they could make an actual comparison to see if they were being overcharged. The most important thing is to understand the actual KPIs of your prospects and how you can position it the best way to them. The next type of follow-up email is what we call the thoughtful bump. Now, the biggest issue with generic bumps, things like just bumping this up, wanting to put this at the top of your inbox, is it adds no value. What are you bumping up? Who are you and why are you even in my inbox? These are questions that are going to be going through your prospect's mind as you send these sorts of emails. One of the most important things that reps often miss is even though you may have sent this prospect 3, 4, 5 emails, it could be the first time that they're seeing it. So if they just see any thoughts in their inbox, they have no context as to who you are or why you're even reaching out. And even if they did see your first email, the chance they're actually going to remember it and what you do is basically zero. So what we don't want to do is confuse the prospect where they're just thinking, who is this person? What do they want to do? We always need to give context first. Every single follow-up needs to lead with why you're reaching out to them. And this massively helps with your preview text. Now, preview text is the first 30 to 50 characters of the email that the prospect can see before actually clicking onto your email. That means you get some free real estate in their inbox. So what we want to do is always rehash the trigger, why we're reaching out to go from there to make sure it's clear for the prospect. I have a few different ways of how I structure these emails, so I'm going to get into the 2 variations so you can test both out and see what works best for you. The first variation is focused on a pain or goal. Given that pain is a focus for you and the team, thought this could be worth a chat. Any thoughts on my last message? Now, again, if I was reaching out to a sales leader, I would say something like, hey, Marcus, given that ramp time of your new hires is a focus right now, thought this could be worth a chat. Any thoughts on my last message? The second variation is where we call out the trigger instead of the pain. So what this looks like is, given that you recently thought pain could be a focus, any thoughts on the last message? So what this would look like is, hey John, given you recently joined Gong as the VP of sales, thought ramp time could be a focus in your first 90 days. Any thoughts on my last email? Few key principles of this is you always need to add the context before you ask a question. Lead with the trigger, lead with the pain, make it super clear that you've done your research and you actually understand what you can do for that prospect. Then ask for thoughts. Don't assume your prospect knows who you are or knows what you do. Again, 97% of the prospects we reach out to have no idea what you do or that they even have an issue in the first place. So always lead with the context and make it super simple. Let's go through a few quick things to make sure you avoid to actually start getting responses in your follow-up emails. The first one is don't lead with just checking in or other generic statements. It adds no value and doesn't help at all. Never say things like following up on the below or other generic statements as it adds no value and the prospect will just try to ignore you. And never assume that the prospect's going to remember your conversation, your previous email, or any of your outreach. Always assume that this is the first time they're going to see it. So restate the relevancy, restate the trigger, and restate why they should even care. The next type of follow-up is what we call the case study bump. Now, this is so important because case studies are a great way to build trust and genuine belief that your solution can help them get the result they want to do. One of the biggest issues is most reps lead with fake statements or massively inflated numbers that just look fake instantly. Something like, we helped someone 50x their ROI. Nobody believes this and it's not specific enough to be valuable. Don't lead with vague, generic, or unbelievable statements. Make it specific to what they actually want to do. When we're structuring social proof, the process is extremely simple. Don't lead with something vague. Don't lead with an irrelevant outcome. How you should do it is we helped insert specific company get specific outcome in specific time period. This way, we're talking to who we help to make sure it's relevant to them. So they can think they've helped another company like us. The likelihood they'll be able to do it for us is much higher. The second thing is the outcome. Make sure it's specific. Talk about the exact numbers, the percentages, the multipliers that you achieve for them. And the last part is the time frame. Talk about how quickly you were able to get them these results. If I was trying to sell a fitness offer, I wouldn't just say we help people lose weight. I'd make it as specific as possible. Something like I helped John, a 72-year-old veteran, lose 5 pounds of fat in 4 weeks. Suddenly, if you're another veteran, if you're an older person who I'm targeting, that's going to be way more specific. But if I'm going after a 25-year-old man, of course that's not going to be relevant. So we have to make it specific. Use a similar company or a similar profile to the prospect you're reaching out to. Talk about a desired outcome that prospect wants to achieve and talk about the time frame of how quickly you were able to get them that result. So if I was actually targeting younger people, I wouldn't use the veteran. I'd say something like, I helped Jamie, a 21-year-old uni student from the UK, gain 12 pounds of muscle in 7 weeks with my program. I have the same demographic, the same outcome, and a time frame that seems realistic. So you can actually put yourself in those shoes and relate to the person I'm talking about. The next best way would be to use a big name in the industry as well. So if I was talking about Michael B. Jordan or a celebrity that I've helped, you'd naturally believe it more because that person has status. It's the same with cold outbound. Use the biggest companies that your company sold to, as that adds more status and trust in your product. So if I was reaching out to a sales leader, trying to sell them outbound OS and the consulting we do, the worst way I could do this would be saying something like, we help teams book more meetings. It's vague, it's generic, it's not an outcome anybody wants. A little bit better would be if I said something like, we helped an SDR team go from 40 meetings a month to 90 meetings a month. But the best way that I could do this would be if I said something like, we helped Gong's SDR team go from 40 meetings a month to 90 meetings a month in 6 months with our solution. The actual email structure for this is very simple. It's, hey name, given that pain is a focus, thought this could be worth a chat. Here's a quick breakdown on how we've helped Social Proof achieve specific outcome in a specific time frame, worth a chat, and link the case study below. So what this would look like is, hey John, given ramp speeds a focus, here's a quick breakdown on how we helped Gong half their ramp time in 3 months using our systems. Worth a chat. The key principles are very simple. Always lead with context. Always use the biggest name you have, as that adds more status. Use specific numbers. Anything vague leaves it up to the prospect to think about what are the specifics, and that just leads to more confusion. And always link the real case study. Don't just say it, make it so they can actually check it out. Another key part is to match the case study to the relevant persona. If you're talking about a B2B SaaS company, share how you helped a B2B SaaS company. If you're talking about a fintech, share how you helped a fintech. Don't use completely different industries, as that does more bad than good. The next part is the follow-up strategy and how you can actually create a sequence of follow-up emails to gain more responses. So how I structure this is very simple. Email 1 is always my tips framework, which is why I'm reaching out. with the relevance, the pain, the social proof. It's my main email. Email two, 2 days later, is then the third party bump to give value and help the prospect decide if it even makes sense. Email three is 2 days after that, which is a thoughtful bump where I give some more context and a reason to reach out. Then I'll go into a new thread with a new tips framework focused on a different pain or a different angle. 2 days after that, send a case study to add social proof and context. And the last part being the breakup email, which is a soft way to end the conversation if we haven't had any responses. This sequence works so well because you're not hammering people with generic messages like any thoughts or just trying to get them to respond. You're giving actual value or more context. So even if they don't respond, you're building trust with these people to help them go from the 97% not thinking about it ultimately to the 3% who's going to be ready to buy now. Few key things to focus on: never send emails daily. It's way too aggressive. People are not going to respond to that. Focus on breaking it up to give them time to digest what you've actually said. So those are the 3 follow-up emails that you need for 2026. The third party bump where you're giving value through external resources, the thoughtful bump where you're giving context instead of just saying any thoughts, and the case study bump where you're showing relevant social proof. And look, cold email is genuinely my bread and butter. It's what I've used myself to average 138%, and it's what's working for the 350 reps that I've coached in Outbound OS. So if you want help implementing this in your sequencing today, just book a call below and we'll see if it's a fit. And if you are an SDR, BDR, or account executive selling some sort of software, SaaS or tech, we're going to guarantee that you'll get about 50% more meetings in the next 60 days because we know this process works. Either way, let me know in the comments which follow-ups you're going to be testing, and I'll see you in the next one.